This is an interview with Barbara Lehr, a charter member of Hope United Methodist Church, and I'm going to just sit and visit with Barb a little bit about the history of the church and some of its early beginnings. Barb, can you tell us about the first time you learned of this Christian community that is now known as Hope United Methodist Church?
Well, we had moved over to Shenango there, and there weren't very many churches. In fact, there was just one, it was a Presbyterian church that was meeting in the high school that we knew about, and we had children of high school age and pre-high school age, and we were looking for a youth group. And that was our main motivation, was to get the children involved in youth group. And we'd gone over to Wilshire for a few times, but then found out about the, as I say, the one that was in the Fine Arts Building at the Cherry Creek Schools, and that was Presbyterian too. And we said, oh, I know that we said many times, I wish our Methodist church would start here. And it wasn't long afterwards that Bob Cole came knocking at the door.
He came to your residence?
He came into our house, and he was canvassing the neighborhoods around the area of the property that they had. I don't know if they had purchased it at that point, but we're looking at the one on the corner. And the first question out of his mouth was, "Are you a Methodist?" Or and I thought, "Oh dear, somebody's been listening." So we had a long visit and found out that he had grown up in Minnesota at a beach that my dad was a big fisherman, and we would pull the boat, or I would go with Dad, and same beach, same place where they had a grocery store for Bob Cole and his family, and they lived in Illinois, and it was called Illinois Beach in Minnesota. And so it was kind of already right off the bat there was a connection with Bob Cole. Anyway, we visited and we told him the ages and we'd like to get started. And then I said, I've just come from a church in California where I was the choir director for 10 years. Would you like a choir director?
And he took you up on it.
Yeah, he did. It was a good offer. And so that's how we got started. And then we did find out too that, and then we told him, of course, that the needs for our children. And he said, well, we're planning to be in the Bellevue school, but we can't use it at night. And and I said, well, the house that we had bought had a finished basement. And we said, well, they could come over here and have their meetings at night.
So you and Jim opened your house to the youth group?
Uh-huh. So the meetings were at our house in the playroom in the basement. And that continued until Vicar Hall was opened.
Well, these memories are then from 1974, maybe 75 and 76, when the church was still meeting at the Bellevue School.
Uh-huh.
What do you remember about church services at the school?
Well, we were quite eager to, when we kind of got established as that I would kind of look at the music part of it. The piano was needing tuning, and we had that done. And it was presentable, and we were meeting in the gymnasium of the Bellevue School, and it had a kitchen attachment to it. And I don't think that we had full access to the kitchen, but I know that they set up the table and serve coffee and stuff. The ladies would bring their stuff from home, I think.
And did you play the piano, or you had someone to accompany?
No, Margie Hagan also joined and became part of that. She lived in the South Village, I lived in the North Village, or the village on the lake. And so we were close by, and she came over and started to be the pianist for that, and stayed a long time. So we're lucky on both fronts. and had good music from the start. People began to join, say they would be joining in a choir. So I opened up on Thursdays my living room and had choir practice. So they started coming over to the house. And I don't remember what I purchased right off the bat. I had some music. I had a bit of a log from my other work in California. So I picked out some things that were kind of oldies and goodies type thing. So I thought people would maybe at least know them. And we began, and the choir started right away. And that attracted a lot of folks to come. And I remember in my living room, I had set up a few rows, and each time I would had to add another row. And it got quite, the living room got, we were good size at that point. And so that's how we managed the choir. And, anyway, that was very successful.
Well, after they built the building at the corner of Dayton and Bellevue, you moved the choir activities over to that building?
Yes. Yeah, they had put in what would you call them? I can't think of the name.
For the choir, you mean
Yeah,
the risers?
Risers.
Yeah.
I wanted to say rafters. Risers, and they put in risers for us, and we put on chairs on that, and then Bob wanted us to march in, and he had a routine in his mind what we wanted. We began to communicate on those kinds of things, and we began. Another thing that he wanted was us to teach music to the congregation. So each Sunday we would have one person volunteer, and the members kind of like to do that, to have a group singing, and our favorite hymns to sing, and people would raise their hand. So we began to have that sing along at each service, and that got the people involved too in the congregation on their singing.
And pretty soon you began to recruit people to sing solos or be featured singers?
Dave Pudluck was our major soloist. Of the group, I think he was the main one at that point. He was singing. He had been singing in their where they were before. I believe they were very active in that group.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I wasn't part of that, so I don't know exactly. But I know that he had been there being soloist.
Yep. And then later you had mentioned Merlin Bender, I believe, and Wendell Bell.
They came in later, but when we were in the fellowship hall.
Yep.
And of course, we as we grew and people with experience and so on, I began steering them towards some of the new stuff that was coming out. As a choir director, you get samplings in the mail and so on and so forth. So there was a small budget that I was working on that had been given to me and to use. But I did for a while. I did buy. I think the Church's Grace on Yale Street. It's a Methodist church there. They let us borrow music for a while, and then we'd use it and then bring it back to them.
When we were talking earlier, you also mentioned some choir robes that the
yeah.
early church acquired.
The choir robes came from, and I'm not sure where that center was, but these robes had been used before, and then as they were when they got new ones, they had them on hold to be given to churches that were starting, so that they could also start out with new robes. And I know that when we were able to buy our own, we gave them back, and they went on to help another church, like, yeah, to get started. You feel more like you're a choir when you're dressed
Yes.
in a robe, and you're kind of a one unit piece, I guess.
Well, let's back up just a little bit and tell us what you remember about Robert Cole as the pastor.
Well, I liked his sermons. He had a good sense of humor with him, and he had, I think, a good style about it. This was, I believe, his first parish. I think he was right out of college or preacher's school.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we were kind of new to him in that, but he was very personable. I enjoyed his sermons, and know what they say exactly, but very down-to-earth fellow. And he was a family man, so he spoke of that, and he seemed to be on the same level as we were. You know, he knew his congregation and who they were, and he was just a very fine gentleman.
Tell me what you remember about how they came to name this church Hope.
Well, that Shirley and I have a thing going. Shirley Hall and I have a thing going. Who actually named the church, she or me?
Okay.
I think we were both campaigning. I had come from Hope Lutheran, and I wanted it to be Hope. And then Shirley later, this was after the fact, that she said the same thing, and I know I had campaigned for people to go for Hope, and Hope it was.
What were some of the other names they considered?
Oh, I don't know. I know, but one that was always, they didn't want it to be the damn church.
Because the Cherry Creek Dam is right in that neighborhood.
There are a lot of other names, but that one, everybody would have a laugh over that. And the preacher would have to carry that same name, so. When asked, what church do you belong? Nobody would want to come to our church.
Well, after Pastor Cole, Alton Brown and Victor Schult were associated with the church. Tell us what you remember about Alton Brown.
Oh, that was a good story because this involves our basement again. I don't know if I should tell this.
I think it's okay.
You can play it out. But they had a poker game going in my basement. But the funds, the winner didn't take all. Well, the winner would take all, but then that went to the slush fund at the church for the needy. It was always to go to the fund where people come in and have needs.
Yes.
And that's where the winnings went for this poker game. And anyway, we had a table down in the basement and for cards and stuff.
And who would typically play?
Let's see, it would be, well, with Jim and Al. I was trying to think who else would. It would vary, so I'm not quite sure. I don't remember exactly.
No. I remember that Al Brown smoked a pipe.
Oh, did he?
And some people said that the church was non-smoking except for his office.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got to make people comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, Al was a good guy. Actually, on the call of Al Brown, Jim was had pastor parish, and and I went along to call. He was living in Breckenridge, and so he and some of the members of the committee and myself went to Breckenridge to visit with him. And so we were at the church there. They have a very cute church in Breckenridge. And he was one of the guys in Breckenridge. I mean, he was really a small town, kind of like that, where they meet for coffee and all that stuff.
Yes.
Play cards, and they do that in my hometown too. Certain places. But anyway, we met in the evening, and all the committee and Jim went into the room to talk to Al, and Laura was sitting outside the church, and so I was sitting with her, talking to her, and her main thing that she said, well, I hope we get to come to Denver because I want to finish college, she said. And she was in psychology, and she hadn't finished her degree. And she had been a good sport about living in Breckenridge, I know, but she had this longing in her face. So I had made up my mind that I'm going to make sure she comes, because I want all women to be educated. Anyway, so of course it had been already decided. They had decided that he should come. But I told Jim that I was ready to give it to him if he didn't.
Good. And was he easy to work with for the music program?
Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely. In every way. In fact, encouraged, as I said, the workshops and all that to make sure that, and I think he was a keeper of the purse, and that was always an issue. And, but he wasn't unreasonable about it in any way. When we wanted a little for the children's choir, we thought maybe this was kind of old school, but we wanted a little thing to wear around over their dress clothes and a bowl. So, well, there wasn't too much funds for that, so I got some mothers together and they sewed them.
All right.
And stuff like that. But as I tried to be frugal with the music, that was the big expense for my department, was always the buying of music.
Well, after you got into the new building at the corner of Bellevue and Dayton, did the attendance increase?
Oh yeah, very much so. Almost steady. And yeah, we had to. I don't think there was any slumps in the attendance at all.
No.
They were already offering things like youth, Sunday school youth, and music for the kids. Someone had donated Orff instruments, which are rhythm instruments for kids, for the younger ones. Mm-hmm. And they were offering summer school program for 2 weeks. I went and worked with them on that, and with their rhythm instruments and stuff. And youth group had started. I think programs really kind of moved right along. Maybe I'm sort of condensing them, but it seemed to me like there wasn't a long period of time, and the church was offering. We needed to have a children's outreach right away because of the location of our church.
The neighborhood had a lot of families.
Yeah, it was really important for families and children.
Yep.
It still is. And particularly youth.
Yeah.
Of course, we were on that bandwagon because of our own children. And the project that they did for the youth group was they had just built Vickery Hall, and the Hall had a truck, and Hall and Jim took the kids out, and I don't know, I guess they had gotten an okay to go and cut down the beetle kill trees.
Yes.
It was a time when people were still burning in the fireplaces.
Right.
And their project was to cut the wood and sell it. And they did get enough money to put the rug down in Vickery Hall. The youth group did that.
Well, Victor Schultz was, I believe, retired, and then asked to come back and serve as the associate minister with Alton Brown. What do you remember about Victor Schultz?
Well, you just he was the visitation, was yeah, and they were over at the house and nice folks. Um, he took over and on some of the sermons. He delivered a fine sermon, and he was very pleasant fellow. I think he did a lot for the church as far as growth was concerned because he made personal contacts.
Yes.
And Mrs. went along, and they're both very pleasant, and he put a lot of energy. His health was quite compromised, but they pursued their job in that regard, and they did a lot for our growth, I think.
Yes.
Got out into the neighborhoods and made visitation.
And he passed away soon after that. He didn't serve very long, and I
No.
believe you were telling me that you arranged some of the music for his funeral.
Yeah, he had wanted the movement from Dvorak's New World Symphony, and going home, and we got an arrangement of that and sang it for him.
That's great. Well, after you were in the new building, did we buy a piano or an organ? How did that work for the instruments?
In the new building.
Yeah.
Well, we had a volunteer piano for a while, and but Margie was not satisfied with the piano, and I wasn't either. It wasn't keeping its tune very well, the one that we had, and it was sort of on a temporary loan basis as it was, the one that we had, and so again, maybe the money came out of the woodwork. I don't know exactly. I can't remember. But we did purchase a really fine piano, and it's still, it holds its tune, and it's a wonderful piano, and it's presently in the, and we used it through all the service until we moved into the main sanctuary. But it presently is the practice piano in the choir room.
Yeah. And when did you first get an organ?
Well, let's see. I don't know about that so much. I think that's after I had when I went on to my school job.
Yes.
I went over to. We were still on the other organ. I don't remember the ins and outs about the organ.
Sure. Well, in 1984, they expanded into the present sanctuary and built a large addition to the church. And now you had actually a choir loft or a space for the choir. Tell us what you remember about those days in the early sanctuary, the new sanctuary.
Oh, that was terrific. Of course, I pushed to hold 50.
In the choir.
Yeah, because we were almost getting there. But I had said I would like to be able to have it at least, and they said it would hold 50 at that time. But then they said they were going to put a railing in front. And they said they'll take the railing out, and then we'll push everything forward, and it will hold 50. So I guess I don't think I answered your question.
In a way you did, yes.
But that was my main. I went to Hall for that, but he said that's a small matter. I didn't think so. No, I don't know if he said that, but it wasn't something that was high priority at that point in time. But actually, the loft is almost reaching that now, and it's you get used to sitting a certain distance apart, I suppose. But when you give it a little more of a squeeze, it'll hold 50.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the story of purchasing the new Steinway, a better piano for use in the new congregation in the sanctuary.
Yeah. Well, that was the story was well, we were in the music committee. We were raising funds through programs and stuff, and trying to develop a budget for the Steinway piano. We really wanted to honor Cheryl with getting a Steinway. With the fabulous player we have, we needed a really good instrument. And so, anyway, we had been working at that project, and we were raising some funds. And so there, we had a little small committee within the committee, the music committee, to go and shop. And Cheryl went along, of course, and they had said definitely has to be a Steinway, the king of piano. And so, anyway, they said, well, we'll in order to really show the congregation the difference and the beauty of the piano and how they work and so on, and then maybe they'll be influenced by the good quality, and we'll bring it out for free and have it in your sanctuary at Thanksgiving. They did this for us at Thanksgiving, and so the congregation heard it for the first time during that season. And of course Thanksgiving is pretty close to Christmas, so they said, well, we don't want to, why don't you keep it for Christmas? You've got all this music, you know, going, and your cantata and so forth. Use it for that and keep it there. And so we agreed, of course, to that, and so it stayed. And pretty soon after Christmas, they said, well, Easter isn't too far away.
Yes.
You can certainly hold it for, you know, and they had told us it was a second-hand piano because a lady had bought it before, and they were going to give us a good deal on it because it was second-hand, and the lady had bought it, had it delivered to her living room, and she sat with it for about a week and decided it was too big for her living room, so they came and got it and brought it to our church. So then it was classified as second-hand. And so there was this deal that came our way that they were going to take some money off on it. And then some money came out of the woodwork, and by golly, if they didn't buy the thing outright.
It worked out very well.
So that was a good way, a little maneuvering on the part of the piano company. But
And that's the Steinway that sits in the
it's a
sanctuary
Steinway.
today.
Never, since the day it arrived at Thanksgiving, it's never left.
Yep.
And by the way, it's got a nice, some ladies have made a nice blanket for it. It now has its Steinway blanket.
Yep.
But they must have a blanket.
Well, Richard Vickery came as a pastor after Alton Brown, and you worked with him as part of the music program.
Vickery, I tell you, that's when my dad got sick. And what year was Vickery?
I believe in 82 or 3, something like that.
Vickery and that was a transition time for me because my parents were going to come and live with me.
Yeah.
My hometown didn't have a facility where they would not could live together. My folks could live together.
Sure.
So they came to live with me, and so I retired from the choir.
Oh.
And but I kept in touch a lot with the John Lee, and would come and be with my dad. They kind of hit it off, and John Lee was at our home quite often.
Tell us a little bit about what your church meant to you in those early years when your family was growing up.
Could you clarify that?
Yeah, say from 75 to 85, the first 10 years of Hope's existence.
What the church means to me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I grew up in a small town, and one of the things I think I missed when we moved to California particularly was a feeling of, I should have said before this, that I had a very large extended family with aunts, uncles, and cousins.
Yes.
and living in a small town. So that was my growing up atmosphere, and the church was very important to me. And it happened it was named Hope as well. It was a Lutheran church. But you get pretty close-knit, and I still am tied to that same bond because I go back and visit my family in Minnesota every summer. And the church has always meant family to me, extended family. When you're in a different town and stuff, like in California, I didn't care for California because there wasn't any family there. But we had the church, and we became very, very close-knit. And as was exhibited in Jim's funeral, they all came to his funeral, that family from the church in California. All of them were there. And the preacher gave the eulogy. And so there's just no other way to say it. It's what my family is, and always has been, and it is a large extended family, my grandparents, my cousins, my aunts and uncles, my church. It's a meeting place. It's to meet and greet and to see people, to have a place. If I get home, now that I'm living alone, I can always go to the church and see friends. I know where to go.
And you sang in the church choir last Sunday, I believe.
Well, I've been singing in the choir since forever.
Yeah. One of the things you'd mentioned earlier was you thought that Hope in its early years had a fun, loving atmosphere.
Yeah, well, there was people enjoy humor no matter where it is.
Yes.
And my choir rehearsals were always, that was one thing I had to contend with. It was, as I said before, the person that I know and love would be always instigating a lot of the problem. But the whole atmosphere was fun-loving, and no one takes themselves too seriously, and we had always a good time. And I think that's what you mean by that. But
Yes.
it just extends. The people were, and they still are. The choir rehearsals are fun.
Yep. Well, we talked a little bit about the past 42 years of Hope. What would you like to see at Hope for the, say, next 42 years?
It'll continue the way it is, and to continue to grow. In the early days, I'd always kept pushing for families and children. The community, as I worked in the schools too, that it's important for the kids to have a foundation like that of a place, if that's the way they want to have a religious foundation for kids, and a feeling of family and community. So it's growing by leaps and bounds in that area, and I hope it can continue. I know that all those churches on Church Row there are contending with the super growth of the community, and to provide a feeling of community and neighbors, and know that they're safe.
Yes. Well, Barb, thank you for sharing your memories of Hope United Methodist Church. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, thanks for including me in this. It's I really appreciate your inviting me in.
been my pleasure, and you and Jim were important members and charter members of this church, and we value your experience and all of your contributions. Thank you.